All right, so retailers as media and data providers. Like Steve said, the more common term for this in the marketplace is retailers as publishers, but because a lot of my internal stakeholders, our brand teams, are not really marketing folks, we tried to make it as simple as possible. So it is retailers monetizing their data for media and data opportunities. However, I am thinking of a rebrand. So for you Game of Thrones fans out there, I'm thinking of calling it retailers as White Walkers, because the retailers are destroying all of their competition, raising it from the dead, and bringing those capabilities internally. Oh, we're almost there. Oh, all right. Played a nice trick on me. So this is my lovely wife, Lillian, and so one of my favorite work interactions we have is if we're out at a party and I'm introducing myself and it ends up coming up what I do for a living. I love saying that I sell toilet paper for a living, and this is where she rolls her eyes and then interrupts that no, he works in marketing and he works for Georgia Pacific and sells paper products. So, she is actually correct that I do not sell toilet paper for a living, but it seems like an easier way than saying that I either create or take advantage of situations for specific people to try to buy specific products at specific retailers. So we'll stick with I sell toilet paper for a living. So you can see we look very rested and lovely in this picture. That is because that is pre my son. If you looked at us now, we're very tired, look significantly older, but we love it all the same. So what does Georgia Pacific do? So we're probably one of the largest companies that you've never heard of, or if you have, congratulations, that's awesome. We are the largest paper manufacturer in the country. So our unique position is we have both branded and private label. So you can see some of our brands, like a Quilted Northern or an Angel Soft, but then we also do store brand. And so as you look at our brands, so majority of what we play is in the paper space, so paper towels, toilet paper, Dixie plates. But then our innovation pipeline, we're trying to expand beyond paper, especially when you're in a category that basically grows with the amount of butts in the country. We try to see if we can differentiate our portfolio a little bit. So for today, we're going to talk about retailers as media and data providers. So there are 3 key focus areas today. Why is the trend happening? How to get involved, and how to evaluate it. So like Steve said, retailers as publishers, the reason it's called that is because more and more consumers are going to retail websites, whether it's to actually buy products or to look at ratings and reviews, do product research, and things like that. And so if you look at the ComScore Top 100, retailers make up a huge portion of that. Even in the top 20, Amazon's a top 4, and Walmart also rounds out the top 20. With others more aggressively catching up, whether it's Target or Instacart or Kroger, more and more consumers are flocking to retail websites for that source of information. Then if you think about, like I mentioned, product searches, so depending on what study you're reading, anywhere between 40 to 70% of product searches, whether you're going to buy online or in-store, happen on retail.com. So then if you think about the fact that you have to log into your Amazon account, you're using traceable tender, you're using a loyalty card in store, they're capturing more and more data on you. Then they're creating partnerships with other people and basically tracking everything you do in your entire life. So our president in our vision talks about we want to create virtuous cycles of mutual benefit. That sounds not like the most intuitive thing in the world, but if you really dive into it, it does make some sense. So we basically want to create value for our retailers, our consumers, and then in turn, we will create value for ourselves. So if you think about this trend of retailers as media and data providers, so why it matters for GP, as a CPG, we sell probably 99.9% of our products through other retailers. We do not get to capture that data. So we lose them when they walk into a Walmart or onto an Amazon, buy the product. And so this is a great way for us to start to get purchase-based information, better targeting, better measurement. But then if you even think taking the trend one step further, so this is an opportunity for us to have another trading variable in our negotiations. So we obviously sell products to these retailers, but then these retailers also at the same time want us to invest in their media properties. And it's a significant investment. So being able to pair the two together is a good way for us to try to negotiate better to drive more value. So a couple benefits there. For the retailer, I will not mince words here. It is a monetization stream. They are finding a great way to take all that data that they have, monetize it, and sell it to people, not suckers, but companies like us. And then for the consumer, so if we have more data to target, we can create better experiences. And so for the consumer, it's going to be getting better messaging at better times for them in a very seamless and frictionless manner. So how it all comes together, like I mentioned, we are trying to take as much of that data as possible. People, as much as we wish they were, are not flocking to angelsoft.com to sign up and give us their past purchase behavior, their credit card information, their email address, home address, everything like that. So we're taking that data that we have to better target. So we want to reach the right target, with the right content. So that's our creative messaging. And then in the right context. And so context is not only where it's showing up physically, but where it's showing up in the path to purchase, or the consumer experience journey, as we call it. So taking that one step deeper, we use that targeting and all that data to start the process, but then the benefit of these retailers is they have all that 1P data from targeting to purchase, and so it creates quicker feedback loops. So the much lower level of impressions for statistical significance, I think we said it yesterday, always be testing. This enables that. We can do it at a few million impressions, get a quick read, get some measurement, and then continue to optimize. And if we're doing it effectively, you can see those little coins at the bottom there, we will be driving more value and revenue for our business. So how does this come to life? I think most people know of the search opportunities, whether it's sponsored ads on Amazon or Walmart performance ads and display banners, but these retailers are continuing to build those capabilities. The scariest one for me is in the video space. So I think it's not surprising to know that the NFL is the largest live audience in our country, right? Football is a pretty big deal. And so NFL Sunday Ticket, their partnership with DirecTV ends at the end of the year. One of the 3 leading bids for that is Amazon. So can you imagine they have the largest 1P database of any of the retailers, and then they're about to capture, or potentially capture, the largest live audience out there that will only continue to build them as White Walkers, destroying all that competition, bringing them back up. It's a very scary proposition for us and how we need to get involved. So how this fits into our total campaign process. So we have brand media, which is more of our national awareness, driving to our brand websites. We also have retail media, which is driving to our retail websites, ideally to purchase products or more commonly performance marketing. So these retailers as media companies, they can work across the entire spectrum. So from an encounter phase, that would be driving mass awareness. That could be their streaming options like an Amazon Fire TV with OTT. Or even display ads that are more awareness focused, but also this is where our brand media really has a strong footprint, our national TV buy, OLV, streaming audio, and things like that. Explore, so that'd be more of like mid-funnel, and that's where we really start to get involved. So we're getting people based on purchase behavior, people that are likely to buy our products, and then start to interject these retailers. Buy, that I think is pretty intuitive, but mostly paid search is how we do it, people that are actually searching toilet paper or paper towels. If you think that's not that common, toilet paper is a top 75 most searched term on Amazon, just behind like Bluetooth headphones and other cool categories like that, but it's the highest of any CPG out there. People really love searching toilet paper on Amazon. And then share, this is an emerging capability, so not every retailer partners well with some of the walled gardens in social. But we have seen some nice strides there. So like Walmart has partnerships with Pinterest and other opportunities like that to try to get more involved in the social space, take some of their data and also their reporting in the back end. We actually, in our brand experience journey, we have 5 phases. So encounter, explore, buy, share, and then use. But at 9 a.m., I did not want to tell you how to use products like toilet paper. Spare you the gory details. So in terms of scorecarding and measuring this, it would be unfair to compare it to our just plain and simple to our other media alternatives in the marketplace because we're able to capture more from that partnership. So if you look at like a Google or a Facebook, generally we're looking at the media return and comparing it to other similar alternatives. For these retailers, we are able to get an additional value that we wouldn't get from some of our other national partners. And so that's why we created a scorecard to try to measure it a little bit differently. So in any of these categories, if we feel like we're getting something that's differentiated, we might have paid for otherwise, we try to associate a value with it. So because I'm a best for last kind of person, the value, that would be the media return in the bottom right there. That's the one that we rely on the most. If it's not going to be a good media return for us, the rest of it doesn't quite really matter. So data, that would be data that we're not able to get otherwise. If we're able to get more information on our consumer that's buying products, maybe a split between our subscribers versus our one-off purchasers and things like that that we can use to optimize our total campaigns, there's a value for us, and so we try to associate it. Targeting, I think anything that they're able to do that's more proprietary that we wouldn't get. In CPG, that's quite a bit, so we associate value there. Integrations, that would be if they're able to partner with our DMP, if they're able to do some self-service that we can connect everything with, and it saves us from a waste elimination standpoint. Measurement, so I mentioned this is a key benefit, but taking it one step further, if they're giving an added value study like a Nielsen Catalina, an IRI, an ODC, at no cost, hopefully, if we're able to negotiate it right, there's certainly a value there. And then relationship impact. So like I said, I saved best for last, so this one's very important, particularly if the retailers are starting to integrate their P&L. So if we invest heavily in Amazon advertising and then that contributes to our buyer at Amazon, there's a ton of value there. We could potentially give less as a result of investing in this media channel. So I changed some of the names here. Did not get full approval, but I want to focus on the bottom right. So this is how we're sort of looking at the landscape. I mentioned we have brand media, so that's going to be a lot of our national media driving to our brand website. We have retail media, and so this is a relatively new capability that I have the pleasure of leading. And so it's sort of a hybrid between shopper marketing and media. We've noticed over the years the vast majority of our shopper marketing investments are media focused. And so our shopper marketing team now focuses more on the creative and the insights, where my team is selecting partners, negotiating, picking our campaigns, measuring, and optimizing. We also focus on social and promotions, and then running throughout all of those capabilities is our in-house media agency. So right now we are doing display media in-house, and I know yesterday we talked about insourcing versus outsourcing. You can see across the board, it depends on the situation. We do a little bit of both in every area. We do some insourced creative, outsourced creative, insourced media, outsourced media. So the path forward. This space is growing very rapidly. You can see across all CPG, whether it's us or our competitors, that investments in retail media is skyrocketing, especially compared to their total digital investments. And I think GP is no different in following that trend. Where it's going to go in the future is you will see more and more things enter the space. So whether it's building out capabilities, so like Walmart bringing self-service on board or more partnerships with social, things like that. But then also other retailers are getting into the space. So my boss, our CMO, Dow, and I, we meet with some key retailers and we show them some of the POV work we see in this particular area and how retailers can be taking advantage and where we think there's the most value for manufacturers like us and then the consumer. But you'll see more and more entrants in the space, whether it's some of the bigger players out there, but then even the smaller regional grocery that have loyalty cards, they're thinking about ways that they can monetize that data. More and more margins are getting compressed in our particular categories, and so everyone's trying to find that edge, that way to drive some long-term value for their business. And then, so I would think even beyond a CPG like us, where we actually sell products at these retailers, half of Amazon advertising's revenue that they get is from non-endemic partners. So endemic would be people like us. We sell our product on Amazon. Non-endemic would be like a BMW. Unless I check, you cannot buy a BMW on Amazon, but they are a big investor in the space because they can get all that targeting for people that might be in the market for a car or something like that, and then use it to get better data, better targeting, better measurement. Awesome. Thank you.
Actually, this is a bit of a two-parter because I've got some follow-up questions that I'm going to ask. If you guys also could think about what you want to ask Mike. Come forward. We can't see us. All right.
Talk about the putt. Can you talk about the putt?
The putt?
Talk a little bit about the putt.
Yes. I've not played golf in a year and a half, and I drained a nice 30-foot putt for birdie yesterday.
All right.
Yeah, it was a good day at the office.
I, on the other hand, was asked not to golf anymore by the management of a course. My slice is so bad that I aim there to go there. I actually, there are a couple of quick follow-ups to some of this that occurred to me as you were talking. First of all, could you tell us a little bit, name a few names of what retailers seem to be the most evolved here? Obviously, Walmart, Target, and Amazon are three major players, but there are others that we could talk about, or at least mention, that are in this space, or at least emerging in this space.
Yeah, so I think the ones that are doing it the best tend to be the ones that have the most first-party data. And so you can see just from pure site traffic, Amazon and Walmart are very advanced and have a lot of opportunity. They're also making significant investments to bring additional resources internally to build those out. But then if you look at Kroger, so the largest grocery store chain in our country, they have over 70 million loyalty card shoppers, and so they've made great strides in taking all of that loyalty card data, every purchase that people have, with their shopping behaviors, how often they go in store, and using that. Also, their goal is to be the most transparent media company out there, which I think is refreshing from our side, especially as we talk about walled gardens. They want to be that preferred partner that can share data and really work in terms of back and forth and sharing learning. So I think they're also making great strides, but more and more come up every day, whether it's like even an Instacart is trying to find ways to monetize their data.
Actually, your last point about Kroger is another follow-up that I had about how these guys now are competing on a digital basis for advertising. So I'm curious how they're differentiating themselves in talking to you.
Yeah, and so we're really excited for their digital transformation and really the digital transformation as a whole. As you can imagine, as we think about our e-commerce, I'm not sure how familiar everyone here is with some of the supply chain economics, but it is really difficult to ship a huge box of toilet paper. It's half air in there, and especially with now the consumer perception that everything should be free 2 days at their house, that's a really difficult conversation for us to have with our supply chain team. So with a Kroger and having grocery pickup or Walmart online grocery pickup and more and more of that sort of concierge service is really exciting for us, because then we can keep our normal path. We can ship full truckloads to the retail store, and then the consumer is taking a little bit of action to get to the store, which then helps save us a little bit on the margin as well as the retailer. So we're excited to see how they're evolving. I hope grocery pickups in all of their stores, because then we can get more and more people going to the store to pick up the item. There's still that convenience, but it certainly helps from a 2-day free shipping standpoint.
So they have a lot of interesting new points of leverage to differentiate themselves from one another at the retail level.
Yeah, and so it's definitely all coming to a head. So if you think about like Amazon Fresh compared to an Instacart and getting that delivered to the house versus Walmart, Kroger, Sam's Club in terms of a pickup perspective, more and more are trying to shift to these places. And so I think the bigger players will generally win in the long term. They're willing to make the investments in the technology and the advertising to get that shift in consumer behavior. I could see more of like the regional grocery or maybe the ones that don't want to have that huge upfront burden of an investment that may fall off to the larger players. So there will be a consolidation over time.
You brought up Kroger as wanting to sort of be the leader in transparency. This is another question I had about the level of data that they are able to share with you. Obviously, it's first-party data that they're guarding jealously. But I'm curious, what sort of insights are you able to get from them? You mentioned that you're able to get data that's not available to you elsewhere. So I'm curious what you're actually getting in return. How much insight into the profile of your customer that you're getting here that you didn't get before?
Yeah, so I think all of the players are doing a pretty good job of trying to get more and more. I think they hear from people like me and some of my competitors talking about that we need more data, and especially if their sort of outside competitors are providing more added value studies and things like that. They're working hard to catch up and match the need from the manufacturer side. So in terms of what data we get, Unfortunately, a lot of it is sort of pay to play. So if you invest a certain amount, you can unlock certain benefits, and they all have fun names like Platinum Partnership or Captain Level or these great vernacular. But what it does for us is, so I think the standard base case is we're going to get media returns, and that really helps us. We know how many people are in the control versus the exposed, what the dollar lift was between the two, and that helps us know if those investments that we're making are effective. Where we can take it to another level is when we get things like basket analysis or a deep dive on the demographics and behaviors of certain audience groups within the retailer, because then that helps us optimize our creative. We change up our product detail page content. We even look for our long-term assortment may change based on who our shopper is. And a great example would be, so all of our brands we break out, we have a sort of a premium product and then a mainstream product. So in toilet paper, Quilted Northern, that's our premium product. You can get, shameless plug here, 3-ply Quilted Northern Ultra Plush is the absolute best. Angel Soft, while it's a great product, is more of that mainstream. And so when we started selling on Amazon, our brands always had the perception that, oh, it must be that the mainstream shopper on Amazon is the one buying Angel Soft, when in fact, when we got more data back, we found out that our Angel Soft shopper on Amazon is younger than we thought, higher income than we thought, more educated than we thought, and it's the fact that we have a pretty good, we have good ratings and reviews, and then people are shopping that site a little bit differently than they would brick and mortar, and so we've changed our Amazon Creative, our product detail page content to be less mainstream focused and more Amazon focused.
Since you mentioned toilet paper being one of the top searches, I wanted to talk about where this part, the retail media piece, fits into where it fits into the marketing mix, in the sense of where in the customer journey does this become important?
Yeah, so I think these particular capabilities, especially as they build more out like a video or things like that, it can be anywhere, but the majority of where we focus is that mid to lower funnel. I think it's no surprise. I think we all wouldn't be here if more and more of our investments weren't shifting to search. I think especially in this area, it makes sense. If you think about Amazon, like we all held these cohorts, and we try to target specific people for our brands. In some cases, we're the challenger brand, so it makes sense to go after a refined group. But what better than to go after someone literally searching toilet paper? Mm-hmm. And so the way I talk about it internally is, so if you're like at a brick and mortar store, you have your items on the shelf. From an e-commerce perspective, if you're not on page 1 in search, or really if you're not in like the top 5 spots, you're not on the shelf. You might as well not be in the store. You're in like another store across the street in the back room if you're not on page 1. And so that's where we really focus on people that are basically walking down that virtual aisle, looking at only a finite number of products, and we want to make sure that we are one of those products featured.
Are you competing with some of your own retailers on general search? I mean, are they people putting in products that, I mean, this is sort of like Amazon is famous for this, that put in a particular product, and the link to the Amazon buy will show up before the retailers buy. I'm curious how this works within the larger search picture. If these retailers are doing the same thing Amazon is doing in terms of bidding on sponsored spots on search.
Yeah, so most of our search is actually on the retail website versus doing like a PLA or something like that. From a Google standpoint, the majority of our search is driving back to our brand website. We're using it as more of like an awareness lever versus PLAs or things like that are typically handled by the retail team. So from my perspective, if they're investing in that and they find value in it and they're driving sales for us, I'm all for it.
Let them pay for it. So you mentioned video. Let's talk about where video sits within all this, what role it plays where, especially on the retail side.
Yeah, so in my White Walker analogy, I think these retailers are looking for more and more opportunities. I think seeing Voodoo being a featured presenter at the New Fronts is something new. Walmart is trying to build up that offering. Amazon is really pushing Fire TV and those capabilities. You can see, if they're getting involved in the Sunday ticket bidding, they're very serious about trying to fend off more and more competition, or really take them over and crush them if they can. So where it plays in the space, for us, it's really that mass awareness driver. Like especially if we're calculating our media returns, I think it might be a little bit aggressive to say that that's going to pay out in the short term for us compared to something like search. We typically will get better returns, and so that's going to be more of an awareness driver for us. But where it can help is because then, if you think about multi-touch attribution, and so you start with video, and then we're getting more seamless tracking from video to display and retargeting to search, it can help get the full funnel.
Mm-hmm. Can you do conquesting in these systems?
So it depends. So typically from a display standpoint, if we wanted to do conquesting, we would try to target category buyers and then exclude our own brands. And so while we couldn't go after, say, specifically Charmin or Cottonelle from that standpoint, we can go after just the competition in general. But from a search standpoint, yeah, you can absolutely bid on competition. There is a relevancy score included, so it depends on what the results and numbers look like, but sometimes we take advantage of that and sometimes we don't.
Are these networks tracking impressions to sale mainly online, or what visibility are they giving into physical retail sales?
Yeah, so this is one of the most exciting elements for me is that it's not just online sales. So with traceable tender or loyalty cards, the retailers are getting more and more data to be able to track someone from online to in-store, online research, in-store purchase. And so that's where we get the most value. Like I mentioned, that scorecard, when we talk about data and measurement, being able to track someone in-store is huge. I mean, if one of my roles is to capture investment for my team. So I make the business case and hey, we're going to invest this much and we're going to drive this much return. Selfishly, I want to be able to take credit for every sale possible. So not only am I going to look at online sales, but I'm going to look at in-store sales, or if it's more of like a mass reach vehicle, I might even try to get a total market sales lift impact study, whether it's like an IRI and NCS, to try to capture all the sales possible.
So since these publishers are since these retailers are publishers now, they sort of then some of the traditional questions that are raised about ad networks and publishing networks come up. Like, how are they on? How is the state of their inventory in questions like viewability and fraud?
Yeah, so we measure all partners. So we look at viewability and ad fraud, and generally they perform, well, it actually really depends. Some, as you can imagine, the ones that have been more established in the space for longer get it. So they have higher viewability and ad fraud. Even if you look at like Amazon, they're building out their DSP offering, and so you can look at different viewability thresholds. So like you could set bids for a 50% viewability versus a 70%, so they're putting more control back on the advertiser depending on their needs. Others that are newer into the space, I've seen very low viewability, and when we have the conversation, they're like, oh yeah, other people bring this up all the time. And so I'm like, maybe you should think about that.
How about fraud? Are they vulnerable or are they fairly safe?
I think it goes
really.
So
there's some that also are suffer the same.
Yeah, and well, some it actually the less established you get, fraud actually becomes less of a risk, only because they only know how to sell inventory on their own sites, which is not going to be that risky for fraud. But the ones that are sort of newer in the space, but also working on offline capabilities, those are the ones that typically have a little bit higher. But it's all. The viewability numbers are more alarming than the fraud.
Are any of the major retailers doing what Amazon has also done, which is sort of extend the network? You cookie these people and then start buying up inventory elsewhere or extend off their own sites?
Yep. So Walmart's invested heavily in audience extension.
Right.
Amazon's building out the DSP offer. I'd say right now they're a tier 3 DSP, but they're making investments to try to get up to be a tier 1 DSP. And so, yeah, everyone in the space, they realize that you'll have advertisers like myself questioning the value of just being on the retail website. And so they're trying to build more and more capabilities. Really, at the end of the day, they're trying to capture as many dollars as possible. So they're going to offer as many solutions as possible.
And I know you talked a little bit about in-house versus outsourcing. I'm curious about whether this particular channel compels any changes in that. Is this something that's better handled in-house because simply the nature of the channel, or something that you can outsource?
Yes, I think for everyone in each individual situation, it depends, just like the way that we sometimes do it and don't. So it really is based on the business case. One benefit, I will say, for this particular space versus the more national side is often, especially in our Amazon relationship, things are changing constantly. We have items going out of stock. We're going to transition to a new item, things like that. And it always seems to happen at the very last minute. Or, we get word of a promotion that we're going to do, and we have like 3 weeks to get it up and running. So in sourcing it particularly from a display standpoint, not so much on search, helps from a turnaround time, because then you're not, briefing agency, setting up the biz, getting their trafficking and tags, everything. Doing it internally does save us a little bit of time so that we're at, we'll say, internet speed or e-commerce speed or retail speed.
Let's open it up if you have any questions of Mike. Over here? Hang on. Mike is coming.
Hey, Scott here from Ogre. You talked a little bit about it in terms of like the offsite media driving consumers to particular retailers and how the retailers themselves are extending their capabilities to use cookies or whatever to qualify someone as a Walmart shopper and drive them from a site to the Walmart.com page. Just curious, how is the performance for that you're seeing for like the offsite media, and do you use any other partners to drive that sort of offsite to the retailer's website?
Yeah, so in terms of performance, we like to use several data points to measure the total impact. If you were just to look at some of the ad attributed sales that we would get from like an Amazon advertising or a Walmart, search pretty much always outperforms display media. I would say offsite and onsite tend to perform roughly in parallel. Actually, in some cases, offsite's a little bit better because the retailers are charging such a high premium for their onsite inventory that it doesn't pay out. But in general, I'd say search would be the best, and then display. But like I mentioned, that's one data point. We also use mixed modeling. And so when our MMM read comes back, we try to separate out as much as possible. For those that work in MMM, I'm sure you know it's sort of difficult to get all the granular splits, but at a minimum, we try to split search, on-site, off-site. And so in the MMM reads, some of our brands actually will have better performance from a display standpoint. And so then depending on the results, that's where we like to shift investments. In terms of your second part of your question, so other people in the space, I think if we're able to capture enough value for the investment in the retailer, it generally makes sense to invest in them, especially if there's like a P&L impact or we're getting data or things that we otherwise wouldn't. That's generally the first place we'd go. But even if I think back to only 2 years ago when Walmart Media Group wasn't quite what it was, we looked at testing them compared to other alternatives in the marketplace, more programmatic type vendors, trying to leverage whether it's credit card data, geo data, things like that, driving to retail website and doing a little bit of a bake-off.
My wrap question drafts off of that one a bit. Where's the money coming from? How are you shifting? Are you shifting budget, expanding budget?
So it is constantly evolving. So we have sort of 3 splits if you think about an investment standpoint. So we have some of our more promotion stuff. We have our shopper marketing investments, and then our national investments. And so it used to be all of these were in the shopper marketing space, but then we show some POV work to our CFO on like, hey, 40 to 70% of product searches are starting on Amazon, and people are using this as a research engine. Like if we were going to go do a publisher direct buy, that would be a national buy, especially if we're measuring the partners based on an MMM, which would be a national impact. We then have started to shift in how some things are funded. What we ultimately, the way we build the business case for it, though, is if there's a national audience and if they're driving national sales, then that could be a national investment. But if it's still like very retailer specific, they're generally just driving sales at the retailer, that would still be a shopper. So we make the decisions based on the data.
So this is coming actually from multiple buckets.
Yes.
And this is sort of the digital version of a lot of different things that existed before.
Yep, and that was part of the reason behind the role change. So like if you think about before all this, we had our shopper marketing teams, and each team was very incented to try to capture as many dollars as possible for that particular retailer, where now having someone over it, we can make the right decisions, try to segment the audiences out so that we're not trying to compete to just drive the same sale but at two different retailers. And it also more fairly distributes where we should be investing based on opportunity and value.
Mike Feldman, thank you very much. That was really interesting.